My name is Darren Hodge. I'm 41 years old, a wildlife biologist by training, a father of one, and for a brief and unforgettable stretch in October of 2021, a man who looked into something I was never supposed to see. I've told myself it was a fever dream, a breakdown, stress. But I know the truth. And the truth is buried in the hollow beneath Elk Hill, in a stretch of forest that doesn't show up on any official map. The locals call it Devil's Hollow, and that name doesn't come from nothing. I'd taken a seasonal contract with the state wildlife tracking, migration patterns, some conservation survey work. I was alone except for the occasional call-ins with my supervisor, and I didn't mind. My wife had just filed for divorce. Our daughter was caught in the middle. I needed space, silence, nature. The posting was near Teodatin State Forest, deep in the heart of Pennsylvania, the kind of place where your cell signal vanishes before you've even finished parking. I set up in a rented cabin, stocked up on food, brought my work laptop, my trank gear, my field notes. I also brought the memories I couldn't seem to bury. The last fight with my wife, my daughter crying in the other room. The way I'd said things I didn't mean, things I can't take back. The first week was uneventful. One tracked some elk, recorded some nesting patterns, and even came across an old stone wall running through the forest like a forgotten scar. But things shifted on the 9th day. I was off the trail near Elk Hill, climbing a ridgeline I hadn't planned to explore. I was looking for a tagged black bear that had gone offline. Instead, I found a hollow. Not a valley, not a ravine. A hollow. It's hard to describe. It was like the trees bent away from it, their trunks twisted, leaning back as if afraid to grow too close. There was no wind, no bird calls, no crunch of leaves. Just stillness. I should have walked away. I should have logged the coordinates and told the next guy to handle it. But something about the silence drew me in. I crossed into the hollow just as the sun dipped behind the ridge. The light turned copper. Shadows stretched unnaturally long. I stepped over a gnarled root and felt the air go cold. Not chilly cold, like walking into a freezer. My breath fogged. Then I saw it, a stone altar half sunken in the soil, carved with markings I didn't recognize, circles within circles. A vertical line piercing through a crude depiction of an open mouth, and next to it, nailed to the base of a tree, was a wooden placard, blackened, rotting, but one word was still legible. Listen. I thought it was some old hermit shrine or maybe a weird art project. I was about to snap a photo when I heard the whisper. At first I thought it was wind. Then it became clearer, closer, a voice, whispering my name. Darren? I turned, nothing. My radio crackled to life, even though I hadn't used it in hours. It played static, then a phrase one my daughter had said to me just before I left.
I don't want you to go, Daddy.
My blood turned to ice. I mean, the trees bent inward as though exhaling, and the leaves fluttered despite the dead air. I backed up, tripped, fell. When I scrambled up again, the stone altar was gone. Just dirt where it had been. The placard was gone, too. I ran. When I got back to the cabin, I locked every door, turned on every light. I checked the radio battery full, signal strong. I told myself it was exhaustion, a trick of light and memory. I drank until I passed out. That night I dreamed of my daughter's face drawn, eyes hollow, her mouth stitched shut with black thread. I woke at 3:33 a.m. sharp. The cabin was freezing. My breath hung in the air, and on the wooden floor right beneath the front door was a feather. Long, black, wet. Not from any bird I've ever studied. I burned it in the fireplace. The next day I called my supervisor, told him I needed to cut the contract short, family emergency. He sounded disappointed but didn't argue. I was supposed to leave the following morning. That night I heard footsteps on the porch. Heavy, deliberate. I peered through the window, flashlight off. A figure stood just beyond the glow of the porch light. Tall, thin, wearing a parka too clean for these woods. His face pale but smiling. Too much. I didn't open the door. He didn't knock. He just said softly, "You heard it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I just stepped back, heart pounding. "I can take it from you," he said, "the pain, the guilt. I can hollow it out. That's what the hollow is for." I slammed the blinds closed. When I opened them again moments later, he was gone. I didn't sleep. I left at first light. But I never made it more than 10 miles. The road curved into a stretch of forest I didn't recognize. The map said I was heading west. The compass agreed. But the signs, they were wrong. Everyone read Elk Hill, 2 miles, no matter how far I drove. I turned back, took a different route. Same signs. By nightfall, I was back at the cabin. But it wasn't the same. The windows were all shattered. The interior was blackened with soot. The air smelled like burnt pine and old blood. On the wall, scratched into the plaster, was a phrase in looping, uneven letters. "Listen, he waits." That night I sat on the porch with my shotgun, watching the woods. The man returned. Same smile. Same voice. "You're already part of it, Darren. You stepped into the hollow. It remembers you now." I raised the shotgun. "Back off." He met my daughter, the look she gave me before I left. "Nothing," I said, my voice cracking. "Not a goddamn thing." He smiled wider. "Good, then I'll take everything else." He vanished again. It's been a year. I got out eventually. The forest let me go after 3 days of wandering in circles. After I burned the feather and smashed the placard and screamed my daughter's name until my throat bled. I woke up in a ditch outside a state road. A ranger found me. I've tried to resume my life. I go to work. I see my daughter on weekends. I pretend I'm okay. But I keep hearing things. My name in static, my daughter crying when she's asleep. The wind whispering listen. And every now and then I find a black feather on my windshield. Sometimes I wake at 3:33 a.m. with dirt under my fingernails and the taste of pine needles in my mouth. The hollow remembers, so I'm telling you this now. If you ever hike near Elk Hill and you feel the trees bend inward, or you come across a stone altar you weren't meant to find, don't listen. Because once you do, you can never forget. My name's Calvin Brooks. I used to be a seasonal firefighter with the U.S. Forest Service. This happened in 2019, during a quiet stretch in early autumn, when the wildfires were low and the skies stayed mercifully clear. I was stationed in a small lookout cabin near Deep Run Valley, a remote pocket of forest tucked away in the Allegheny Plateau, Pennsylvania. It was supposed to be a break, just 2 weeks alone, cataloging tree health, watching for smoke plumes, checking the seismic sensors that dotted the hills for signs of underground shifts. I'd done it before. I liked the quiet. I needed it after what happened to my friend Marcus that summer. He died in a controlled burn that turned uncontrolled real fast. I was supposed to be with him that day, but I'd swapped shifts. Guilt's a funny thing. It doesn't scream. It just sits behind your ribs like a stone you can't pass. So when they offered the Deep Run assignment, I took it without hesitation. The cabin was 20 miles from the nearest ranger station. So when they offered the Deep Run assignment, I took it without hesitation. The cabin was 20 miles from the nearest ranger station. There's something about that forest. It hums. Not like wind or bugs. I mean it hums. Deep, almost below your hearing. Like the woods are alive and they're thinking. Watching. The first few nights were peaceful. I set up my gear, did the rounds, made some notes about a few fallen trees from a recent storm. I cooked beans over the stove, read old mystery novels, and tried not to think about Marcus. Then, on the 4th night, I saw the lantern. It was a dim yellow glow, maybe a mile down the ridge, floating just off the trail. At first, I thought it was another ranger. Maybe someone had gotten turned around. I grabbed my binoculars and peered through them, expecting to see a figure. I didn't see anyone, just that faint, swaying light, like a flame in a glass case. But it moved too smoothly, too silently, bobbing through trees, without casting real shadows. I radioed base. Nothing but static. I called on the landline. It was dead. I watched the lantern until it disappeared behind a hill. The next morning, I hiked down the trail to check it out. I found no footprints, no tire marks, no broken branches, nothing. But I did find a strange symbol carved into a pine trunk. It looked like a man with antlers and long arms stretched wide, holding a lantern in one hand. The bark around it had blackened, like it had been burned into the tree. I tried to report it when I got back to the cabin. The phone worked again, the radio too. I left a message with base, but they didn't seem concerned. Probably an old hiker's carving, they said. Maybe someone having fun with Halloween early. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the symbol, and then, just after midnight, I heard footsteps on the porch. I sat bolt upright in my cot. No engine sounds, no crunch of tires, just slow, heavy footsteps on dry wood. I grabbed the shotgun they kept locked under the bed and stepped to the door, heart pounding. "Who's out there?" I called. No response. Just silence. Then something knocked. Not on the door, but the window 3 taps, measured, precise. I aimed the gun. I couldn't see a face, but I saw a glow of faint yellow light, like a lantern swaying just out of view. I didn't open the door. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I found boot prints in the frost outside. Long, narrow, spaced too far apart to be normal. and etched into the dirt beside the stairs was that same figure the lantern man scratched in with a stick or fingernail. I packed my gear, called base, told them I was leaving early, but the road wasn't there. I'm serious. I followed the same rut I'd driven in 4 days earlier, but after a mile, the trail just stopped. Trees I didn't remember blocked the path. The air was thick, humid, like July instead of October. Birds weren't singing anymore. It was like the forest had swallowed the road whole. I tried my GPS. It wouldn't lock, just spun in place. My compass pointed east, then south, then back to east. So I returned to the cabin. I tried not to panic. That night I heard the voice. It came from the tree line, low, raspy, and too calm. Trade the flame, it said. Your guilt for peace. I didn't answer. I stayed hidden behind the door, gun across my lap. The next morning there were more symbols, carved into the trees surrounding the cabin, all pointing inward. And hanging from the branches were bones, small, animal, maybe, but tied with red string like charms. I considered running into the woods, but I knew better. That place was shifting. It wanted me to leave the path, to chase that lantern. That night, the knocking came again. 3 taps on the window, then 3 on the back wall. Then 3 more on the roof. I whispered to myself, this isn't real. But the door handle turned slowly. I raised the gun, but it stopped just shy of clicking open. Then the voice returned, your fire burns you. Let me take it. It knew about Marcus, about what I saw in the flames. The scream that plays in my head when I try to sleep. The smell of his suit melting. I screamed back, you can't have it. The forest responded. The wind howled. The lantern appeared again, this time closer, at the edge of the yard. I aimed the shotgun and fired. The flame vanished, but I heard laughter, dry, hollow, and then silence again. I tried to leave at first light, packed everything, ran through the trees. I didn't follow the roads. I just went straight, compass be damned. I hiked until my legs gave out. I collapsed in a clearing full of old stone pillars, moss-covered, broken, arranged in a ring. In the center stood a man, tall, thin, wearing a long coat. He held a lantern. Its glow wasn't yellow now. It was blue. He raised it, and I felt something inside me, like a pressure behind my eyes. My lungs froze. My vision blurred. I dropped to my knees. He stepped closer. You carry it, he said, so heavy, so loud. The flame inside the lantern flared, and I saw it Marcus, his face screaming inside the flame, trapped, twisting. No, I whispered. The man nodded, as if he pitied me. Trade it. I reached forward, then something in me snapped. I don't know what. Maybe it was instinct, maybe something deeper, but I pulled my knife, slashed at the air between us. The flame burst. The man vanished, and I woke up in a ranger station, a day later, dehydrated, raving. They found me collapsed near the road. No one had heard from me in 3 days. They asked what happened. I told them a tree fell on the cabin. They bought it. I didn't go back. I still have the carvings on my boots. The blackened pines scratch across my jacket. I keep them in a box under my bed like cursed relics. Sometimes, late at night, I hear 3 knocks on the window. always three. Sometimes I dream of fire, sometimes I smell melted gear, and always, always, I see that lantern, still swaying in the dark. My name is Alex Merritt. I'm 36. This happened in October of 2020, during what I thought would be a simple weekend retreat to get my head on straight. I work in audio engineering, music, post-production, podcasts, you name it. I hear things people miss. I notice frequencies that others tune out. It's not a superpower. It just means I can't unhear things once I've heard them. It started after my mother died. Sudden stroke. I'd just finished mixing a documentary score when I got the call. I didn't cry, not immediately, but I stopped sleeping. I'd sit up at night obsessing over audio files, filtering white noise, listening for things that weren't there. That's when I heard it. It began as a low hum, almost a background resonance tucked beneath silence. Not in my apartment, not in any real room, but in the gaps between recordings. Like a breath drawn between words, like something was waiting to speak. I needed out, I needed distance, so I booked a cabin through an off-grid rental site. Small, solar-powered place outside a town called Pine Creek, nestled between state forest, land, and hills. No one seemed eager to hike. No phone service, no neighbors, no music. Just my field recorder, some audio gear, and a week's worth of freeze-dried food. Perfect. The cabin itself was beautiful in that rustic, nobody has bled here yet kind of way. A single room, wood stove, small porch. Forest in every direction. The wind made the trees creak like old swings. At night it got so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat echo in my ears. I set up my gear to record ambient tracks wind through pine, distant crows, footsteps over dry leaves. But no matter where I pointed the mic, that same low-frequency hum kept returning. Not on sight, not audible to the naked ear, but always embedded in the file on playback. I ran a spectral analysis on my laptop. The hum wasn't just persistent, it shifted. Frequencies that should have been static moved, like it was speaking in tones we weren't meant to understand. Then, on the third night, I heard my mother's voice, not in a dream, not in memory, on the playback of a 2 a.m. field recording I'd taken near the base of the ridge. Just a whisper tucked behind the wind. "Alex, it's not quiet here." I froze. I replayed the file. The voice repeated. Same cadence. Same impossible tone. Her voice unmistakably. Except she'd been dead for 3 weeks. Cremated. I didn't sleep. I sat by the stove, headphones clamped over my ears, replaying every file I'd captured since I arrived. More whispers, fragmented at first. A man's voice unfamiliar. A child giggling behind the crackle of the fire. Names spoken too close to the mic. My name, over and over, Alex, Alex, Alex. The recorder had a built-in time stop. One of the files had recorded while I was asleep. I never left it running overnight. Yet there it was, 8 minutes and 43 seconds of whispers, dragging footsteps, a door creaking open and shut. I checked the recorder's location log. It said the file was recorded inside the cabin. That night, I boarded the door. I set up my laptop with motion-triggered recording software, aimed it at the porch. I left a mic inside, running into the dew, looped to autosave every 10 minutes. At 3:03 a.m., I woke to the faint sound of shuffling wood like someone dragging something across the porch. I didn't move. Then came the knock, one knock. Then two. Then, after a long pause, the third. I crept to the window, heart in my throat. Nothing was there. Just mist rolling in low over the ferns. I checked the camera. The recording had glitched, skipped 17 seconds. I replayed the audio from the indoor mic. Behind the knocks, I heard a voice. Too loud. Sighed softly, sadly. The next day, I found a symbol scratched into the cabin's back door. A looping spiral intersected by a vertical line. I hadn't noticed it before. I ran a high-pass filter over a wind recording from that morning. Hidden in the white noise was a faint breath, followed by a voice I didn't recognize. You heard it. That means it hears you. By now I was unraveling. I packed my gear, threw it in the car, and drove. Except the road didn't end where it should have. After 20 minutes I pulled over. I was back at the cabin. Not metaphorically, literally. The same cracked stone, same hanging lantern on the porch. I'd driven in a perfect loop without turning once. I screamed. I don't remember stopping. I only know I woke up slumped in the car seat, windshield fogged, headlights dim. The sun hadn't moved. My watch still said 3:03 a.m. I got out. The world was silent. Not quiet. Silent. No birds, no wind. Not even the crunch of my boots over the gravel registered. I lifted my recorder. Hit record. Counted to 10. Stopped it. Played it back. Silence. Then a voice. Your mother came through first. You called her. I dropped the recorder. That night, I tried burning the laptop. The flames licked the casing, warped the screen, melted the plastic. I thought it worked until I turned around and saw the laptop sitting neatly back on the table. Screen on, open. A file was playing, my voice, whispering, it's already inside. I don't remember anything else from that night. I woke up on the porch. No signs of fire, no laptop damage. But inside, the furniture had moved. The table was now against the far wall. My sleeping bag was pinned beneath the stove. And on the ceiling, scratched into the beams, was a sentence in long, looping script. When you hear yourself, run. I didn't sleep the rest of the week. I tried to hike out trail after trail, road after road. Every path looped. Eventually, I found myself standing at the base of the ridge where I'd made that first recording, where I'd first heard my mother. A man was waiting for me. He wore a black jacket, carried a lantern old, rusted. Its glow was a dull blue. His face was pale, eyes too reflective. Trade it, he said. Trade what? I whispered. The sound. The one only you can hear. I'll take it. In exchange? He looked past me. At someone else.
No. He smiled gently. You will, sooner or later. Once it takes your voice, you'll want it gone. Then he vanished. Just blinked out.
I ran. Eventually, after what felt like a month, I found the road again. This time it led out. I never went back. Now I sleep in motels, never the same one twice. I scrub audio for work, but only with headphones off one ear. I don't record my own voice. I don't speak after midnight. I keep my laptop in a locked case. And I never ever listen to the silence, because some nights when it's quiet enough, I hear myself whispering from the other room, and my voice says, "You already traded it." My name is Chris Ellery. I'm 35 years old, and until a few months ago, I worked for a conservation nonprofit that tracked freshwater ecosystems throughout the Northeast. Mostly environmental data, water pH, wildlife populations, invasive algae blooms. It was nerdy work, sure, but I liked it. I liked patterns. I liked balance. What I saw in Stillwater Gorge broke that for me. I don't talk about it. Not to my coworkers. Not to my family. Only to you now, because I think it's still following me. And I need someone to know what's out there before it finds a way in again. This happened in May of 2021. I was sent to log baseline water quality measurements in a series of tributaries outside Stillwater Gorge, Pennsylvania. Not many people go there. The land's public, but unmaintained, half forgotten by the state. The gorge itself was carved by glacial runoff and sits surrounded by old pine, steep walls, and miles of undergrowth that eats trails faster than hikers can stamp them down. They told me it would be a 3-day survey, easy terrain, solo trip, primitive camping, they said. Just a kind way of saying don't expect cell service or marked roads. It wasn't essential, but my mom used to tell me, if you ever get lost, look at your own face. You'll see if you're still in there. God, if only I'd known. I entered the gorge near a collapsed ranger station. Nothing but a stone chimney and a half-buried welcome sign. From there the trail descended fast. The canopy was thick enough to turn noon into a twilight. The air smelled green wet moss, old bark, something sour beneath it. The water below was pitch black and still, not a ripple, not even from bugs. I remember thinking Stillwater, named for a reason. The first day passed uneventfully. I made camp in a shallow ravine, set up my gear, collected samples. Nothing weird, but that night something woke me. Not a noise exactly, a shift. Like the air pressure dropped suddenly, and every tree held its breath. I sat up, heart racing. That's when I saw the reflection, not in the creek, in my mirror. It was standing outside my tent, a figure tall, hunched, watching, wearing what looked like my jacket, but its face was mine, only wrong, longer, stretched. The eyes glinted too brightly, too wet. I spun around with my flashlight. Nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, the reflection was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When morning came, I packed fast. I told myself it was stress, that maybe I dreamed it. Then I checked the water samples. They were all corrupted pH readings spiked, the temperature inconsistent. Every single one of them showed signs of decomposition, as if the water had come from a swamp or a body drain, not a pristine forest creek. Worse, one of the vials had something floating inside it. Something I didn't remember collecting. A strand of black hair. That second day, I hiked deeper toward the center of the gorge to log backup readings. I was maybe 3 miles in when I found it. A pool, perfectly circular, maybe 40 feet across, set into a natural basin surrounded by twisted pines. No wind, no sound. The surface of the pool reflected perfectly too perfectly. No shimmer, no distortion. I tossed a pebble in. The ripples were long concentric rings that moved outward, then snapped back into stillness within seconds. I leaned over. My reflection looked back up at me. Then it smiled. I didn't. I stepped back so fast I nearly fell in. My stomach flipped. Behind me I heard my own voice say, "Careful, you're already falling." I whipped around. No one. I ran, just flat out sprinted until my legs burned. I didn't stop until I was back at the camp. My tent was missing, just gone. The clearing was empty, except for the mirror I'd brought, now standing alone on its tripod in the exact spot I'd set it. I approached, slowly. In the mirror, I saw myself standing there, panting. But my reflection blinked late like a frame out of sync. It smiled. I didn't. Then it opened its mouth and whispered. You should have traded when it asked. That night I tried to sleep under the stars. No tent, just wrapped in my coat, knife clutched in one hand. At 2:37 a.m., I heard water dripping. Even though there was no rain, even though the trees were dry, I looked up. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing. My height, my face, barefoot, soaking wet, steam rising from its skin in the moonlight. It raised one hand and waved. I didn't move. I didn't sleep. By morning, it was gone. But my mirror now had a crack across it. I tried to hike out that day. Every trail led me back to the pool. I stopped counting after the 4th loop. I tried walking in the opposite direction. Didn't help. Eventually, I found a clearing I didn't remember. A stone circle lay embedded in the soil-flat rocks, like stepping stones, spiraling inward. At the center sat a small wooden box. I didn't want to open it. But I did. Inside was a second mirror, round, polished. When I picked it up, the surface shimmered, not with my reflection, but a place, a room, my bedroom, as it looked back home. A still image, frozen at 3:33 a.m. Then my own voice came from the mirror. You could go back. I dropped it. It cracked, but didn't shatter. Then I saw the water behind me, the reflection pool. A figure stood on the surface, not in it, on it, feet resting atop the still water. It wore my face, my eyes, but behind its smile was something ancient and vast, like the void had learned how to mimic love. It spoke, trade the echo, one you love, one memory, one truth, I'll take it. I shook my head. It only smiled wider. You already did, you just haven't accepted it yet. I turned and ran. Eventually I blacked out, maybe from fear, maybe from exposure. I woke up in my car, parked at the ranger station, the one that had been a chimney before. The stone walls were intact, the windows dusty but unbroken. My tent was packed in the trunk. My phone was full of photos, ones I didn't take, shots of me sleeping, close-up selfies with my own terrified face twisted in dreams, photos of my reflection smiling at the lens, and audio files, ones I didn't record, each only a few seconds long. Every single one says the same thing in my voice. You were never supposed to hear this. I haven't gone back, but every mirror I've owned since then cracks, sometimes overnight, sometimes while I'm looking into it. I've caught glimpses of myself smiling when I wasn't, sometimes mouthing words I can't hear, sometimes waving, and when I sleep, I dream of the pool, still, waiting. My name is Michael Redd. I'm 35. What I'm about to share happened in November of 2020, right in the middle of the second wave. I hadn't spoken to anyone in person in nearly 3 weeks. That isolation had started to feel like a constant hum in my bones' background static. So when my sister Natalie called and said she couldn't stop dreaming about the tower, I listened. I keep seeing it, she whispered, over and over. A metal tower in the woods, always the same one. She said she'd seen it in her dreams since childhood, but never thought much of it. But now it was constant. The dreams were longer, more detailed. She even drew the tower from memory and sent me a picture. It looked almost real. A fire lookout tower, rusted, with a spiral stair and a locked door at the top. Dead trees surrounded it like sentries. I showed the drawing to a friend of mine, a park volunteer named Henry, who'd worked with the state for years. He told me there was a tower like that in Bald Eagle State Forest, north central Pennsylvania. It had been decommissioned back in the 80s, and access was restricted now because of safety issues. That got my attention. Natalie had never been to Bald Eagle. She lived in Oregon. She'd never even been east of the Mississippi, so how could she dream of something so specific? That's when she said it. I think something's calling me there. I made the trip alone. I didn't tell Natalie. I told myself I'd hike to the tower, take some pictures, prove to her it wasn't anything special, just rust and metal. Maybe then she'd stop obsessing. I drove from Pittsburgh with 2 nights' worth of gear. Weather was colder than expected, dull gray skies, occasional sleet. I parked off a fire road and hiked 6 miles into the forest using a paper map and a compass, since cell signal was non-existent out there. When I reached the tower, my breath caught in my throat. It looked exactly like Natalie's drawing. Not similar, not close, exact. The fire tower stood in a clearing surrounded by half-dead pines. Rust flaked off the stairwell. Every step creaked under my weight. The wind up top was razor-sharp. The trapdoor leading into the tower's top room was padlocked, but I wasn't planning on breaking in. I took some photos. The moment I did, my camera app froze. I mean locked. The screen went white, and the phone shut itself down even though the battery had been at 83%. I tried to restart it. Nothing. I gave up. I'd come to prove the place existed. That was enough. But when I turned around, the trail I'd come up was gone. I don't mean I couldn't remember where it was. I mean it was gone. There was no broken branch I'd stepped over, no muddy trail. just dense trees. I walked in what I knew was the right direction, but after 20 minutes I found myself back at the tower. I tried again, using the compass this time. Same thing. Back at the tower, panic started to crack through the edge of my calm. I set up camp right there in the clearing. I figured I'd wait until morning, climb the tower again, and maybe get a better vantage. That night, as I lay in my tent, I heard footsteps. Not animal, rustling footsteps, crunching on the frost-hardened leaves, slow and deliberate. Then a voice. Michael. My breath froze. It was my sister's voice. Michael, come up. I'm in the tower. My heart thudded so hard, I thought it would crack my ribs. Please, I don't want to be alone anymore. I didn't move, didn't respond. Eventually, the footsteps faded. The next morning, I opened the tent and found a drawing tacked to the outside flap with a branch. One of Natalie's. Pencil lines detailed the tower from a slightly different angle, and this time a small figure stood at the top, looking down. The figure had my face. I didn't know what to do. I sat by the base of the tower, staring up. Then I noticed the padlock was gone. Just gone. The trapdoor was slightly open. I should have left. I know I should have, but something about that tower, it was like a hook in my mind. I had to see the top. Had to know what was up there. I climbed the spiral stairs. Every step felt like a heartbeat. The wind moaned through the latticework, almost rhythmic. I reached the trapdoor, opened it, and stepped inside. It was wrong. The air was still, but it smelled like rain-soaked paper and burnt hair. The room had wooden floors warped with moisture. The windows were blacked out with soot. In the corner sat a single object. A tape recorder. It was one of those old dictaphone-style machines. I pressed play. A voice crackled to life. My voice. I can't leave. I've tried. I leave and I come back. I leave and I come back. I leave and I come back. I don't know what's real anymore. I see her sometimes, Natalie. She stands outside at night, watching, but I don't think it's her anymore. Static. Then the tape looped, started again. I backed away, heart in my throat. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs below, rhythmic, measured, coming up. I bolted out the trapdoor, climbing down 3 steps at a time. Halfway down, I saw myself coming up, wearing the same coat, same boots, same flashlight clipped to the pack strap. His eyes were different, too wide. The smile was wrong. Too many teeth, he whispered. Found you. I leapt off the stairs. I landed hard on my ankle, felt something pop, but I didn't stop running. I ran for hours, and every time I stopped, I could still see the tower through the trees. Always right there. Eventually, I collapsed. I woke up inside the tower. I don't remember how. I don't remember going back, but I was sitting on the wooden floor next to the tape recorder. A new tape had been placed inside it. A fresh label read, Michael 2. I pressed play. My voice, again, but different. I know now. The tower doesn't keep you. You keep yourself. It lets you believe you're leaving. Shows you versions of yourself that almost made it out. But none of them did. There's no out. Click. Tape ends. I screamed. I destroyed the recorder. I kicked the trapdoor open and jumped down the stairs 2 at a time. This time I didn't stop running until I passed out. When I woke again, I was in a hospital in Lewisburg. A hiker had found me wandering on a road near Po Valley, disoriented, covered in scratches and frostbite. No gear, no pack, no ID, just a drawing folded in my coat pocket. The tower and me. At the top, I asked about my phone. They hadn't found one. When I got home, Natalie was dead. She'd taken her life 2 nights earlier. In her studio, they found dozens of drawings of the tower. Hundreds. One of them had a figure at the top. A man standing, arms out, mouth wide, like he was screaming forever. On the back, she'd written, "He's still up there." Now every night at 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzes. Just once. No caller. No message. Just static. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the tower through trees that aren't supposed to be there. I hear footsteps and a voice just like mine. My name is Travis Rourke. I'm 38 now, but this happened back in the fall of 2021, when I was still working full-time for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. My role was pretty standard field technician, mostly working on trail surveys, tower inspections, wildlife tagging. I'm not supposed to talk about what happened, but I've been writing these entries down over time, trying to purge them from my system. I'm not crazy, but I don't sleep right, haven't in years. Not since the night I climbed the old fire tower off Bear Run Trail and saw what was really waiting in that stretch of gorge we called Black Hollow. I'll start from the beginning. The PGC owns a small network of decommissioned fire towers along the ridges outside Pine Creek Gorge. Most of them haven't been used in decades, just rusting metal relics barely standing, swallowed by trees. But once in a while we'd have to climb up, check the condition of the structure, log weather damage, make sure hikers hadn't vandalized anything. In late October, my supervisor sent me to check on Signal Tower 9. It was remote farther than I'd ever hiked solo, about 4 miles off the main forest road. The last person who logged maintenance on it was back in 2014. I remember because I read the incident report. It said the tech had fallen and broken his ankle, claimed he saw something on the ridge before radioing for help. They said he was probably delirious from pain. I should have taken that more seriously. The trail-in was quiet, too quiet. Not even squirrels in the brush. That time of year should have been full of motion turkey, deer, even the odd black bear preparing for winter. But it felt evacuated, like the forest knew something was coming. I reached the base of the tower just before dusk. The thing stood about 60 feet tall, wrapped in ivy and rust, but surprisingly intact. My job was to check the platform, make sure the bolts were still holding. No exposed rebar or loose joints. I climbed with a harness, but honestly didn't feel safe the whole time. The air up there had that wrong feeling, thin, but heavy. My breath came in short bursts. My skin tingled. It was already getting dark, which made no sense. I checked my watch, 5:13 p.m., but the horizon looked closer to midnight. I pulled out my phone. No service expected. I radioed in to dispatch, just routine protocol. The static response made me pause. Then it clicked. Through the interference, I heard a voice. "Stay, please stay." It wasn't dispatch. I thought maybe I caught a fragment of someone else's channel. Happens sometimes. But the voice didn't sound like it came through the speaker. It sounded like it was inside the radio, like it was crawling through the coils. Flickering pale yellow, swaying just out of reach. It moved between the pines, bobbing as if someone carried it slowly, deliberately. I called out. No answer. Then the radio buzzed again. "Stay with us." I shut it off. I should have hiked back then. I know that. But I told myself it was just a poacher or some hunter who didn't want to get caught. I told myself I'd wait until first light. So I set up camp about 50 yards from the tower. By the time night fully fell, I could barely see my hand in front of my face. The darkness was thick like the trees were pressing in. I lit a small fire, kept close to my tent, made some coffee, and tried to read a field guide just to keep my mind calm. But the fire wouldn't burn right. The flames danced sideways, low to the ground, almost blue at the tips. No warmth, just light. I kept hearing whispering behind me in the trees. But when I turned, there was nothing. The wind wasn't blowing. The air was dead still. Copper, wet fur, and something like rotting milk. I went to zip into the tent when I noticed my backpack was gone. Not misplaced gone, ripped away from where I'd leaned it. No sign of a drag path. No animals, nothing. I stood there, heart hammering, when I heard the sound again. The lantern, it was back, same spot, just beyond the clearing. Only this time I saw the shape holding it. A tall woman, pale as a corpse, long black hair dripping with moisture. She didn't walk, she glided, just above the ground. Her face was empty. I mean that literally. There were hollows where the eyes and mouth should have been. Just smooth, pale skin, and something inside moving just beneath it. Like breathing worms, she lifted the lantern, and behind her the trees shifted. A whole wall of fog poured from the ridge behind her, flooding into the clearing like a wave. I fell backward, clutching my sidearm, but the moment I raised it, the flame in the lantern flared blue, and everything froze. No wind, no fire, no breath, time just stopped. I blinked and she was gone. So was the fog, but the ground was soaked. The fire pit was full of red water. I passed out. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. The fire was dead. My tent was collapsed. My boots were soaked. My hands were shaking. My radio was hissing static again. Then it said something new. Only one may leave. I grabbed my gear, what little was left, and bolted. I didn't stop running until sunrise. When I finally reached my truck, it was crusted with pine needles. My clock was blinking 3:13. I didn't go back. When I filed the report, I left most of that out. I said I got disoriented, said I dropped my radio, claimed the fog messed with my bearings. Nobody questioned it. But a few weeks later, I got a letter at my home address. No return name, no stamp, just a folded page. In neat, tiny writing were 3 words, "She followed you," and taped to the bottom was a photograph. It showed the fire tower, and behind it, in the shadows, a figure holding a lantern. My name is Ryan Geller. I'm 34 years old, and I used to work as a wildlife ecologist for a conservation nonprofit based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Most of my job involved cataloging flora and fauna in rural state forests, checking for signs of invasive species, and assisting the occasional university research team. I'd spent years in the woods. I thought I understood them. I thought I respected them. Then I went to Tioga State Forest in October of 2022, and I learned how small I really was, how fragile. I'd been sent to follow up on a series of strange wildlife reports around a section of the forest near Bear Run Trail odd migration patterns, birds abandoning nests mid-season, that sort of thing. Our usual contact with the DCNR had taken a leave of absence, so I was on my own. I didn't mind. It wasn't my first solo trip. I loaded up my Subaru Outback and headed north, driving through the crisp, sun-drenched hills until the cell signal dropped away and the only sound was the engine humming beneath the chirping canopy. My plan was simple. 2 days out in the forest, take samples, document anomalies, and report back. Easy. I made camp at the edge of a remote tributary, not far from where a ranger station once stood before it burned down in the late 90s. The forest was beautiful. Fiery reds and burnt oranges painted the ridgeline, and the creek beside me babbled with gentle persistence. It all felt normal. But things changed on the second night. It started with sound, or more accurately, the absence of it. I was sitting near the fire scribbling notes when I realized the creek had gone silent. No wind, no rustling leaves, just a flick of flames and the sudden thudding of my heart. I stood, flashlight in hand, scanning the woods. Nothing. But when I turned back toward my tent, I saw something odd, thin wisps of fog creeping over the forest floor, curling through the brush like living fingers. I checked my watch. 8:32 p.m. I remember that clearly. I took a photo of the fog for the report, but when I checked the image, the screen glitched. Just static. That's when I heard the first voice. It sounded like a young girl, distant, calling my name. Ryan, come see. I froze. There was no way anyone else should have been out here. I hadn't seen another vehicle in 20 miles. I called back cautiously. No reply. Instead, I heard something worse, my own voice, echoing back from deeper in the trees, saying exactly what I just said. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the acoustics, maybe some wildlife mimicking. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The fire, now blue at the edges, crackled lower than it should have, casting shadows that didn't match the trees. I should have left then, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed the night, huddled in my tent, clutching the knife I kept for emergencies. I slept in patches. Each time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of fog seeping through the seams of my tent and something standing at the creek's edge, watching. At 3:13 a.m., I woke up cold. My phone buzzed with a notification, except there was no signal. The screen read, "She is near." Then it shut off, dead, battery gone. I stepped out into a thick wall of fog. My fire had gone out, leaving behind perfectly unburned logs, like it had never existed. My backpack was soaked. My compass spun lazily, as if unsure which direction even existed. I tried to hike out, but Tioga wasn't Tioga anymore. The trails had changed. The terrain looped on itself. After an hour of walking, I arrived back at my own campsite. Except this time, something had changed. There was a jar on the fire pit, glass, corked, and filled with red water. I didn't touch it, but I heard her again. That voice, closer now. "Ryan, come see." It sounded like my sister, the one who died 5 years ago in a car crash. She used to say that exact phrase when she found something neat in the woods behind our childhood home. I don't know how I escaped. I think I stopped trying to. At some point I passed out on the trail. A group of volunteer trail runners found me early the next morning, babbling incoherently, covered in bruises, and what they thought was dried blood, except the fluid on my shirt was faintly pink, almost metallic in smell. When I asked if they'd seen a jar near the creek, they looked at me like I was insane. They hadn't seen any fog either, not even a wisp. I told my boss I had a panic episode, blamed it on stress, took a month off, but things haven't gone back to normal. Clock's in my apartment stall at 3:13 a.m. My bathroom sink sometimes drips red, and last night I found a jar in my fridge. Same kind, corked. No one could have put it there. I left it on the porch and called in sick this morning, but now it's back inside. On my kitchen counter, and the condensation on the window says, "You came back. She sees you now." If you're reading this, if you're heading to Tioga, to Pine Creek, or anywhere near Bear Run Trail, please turn around. Don't ignore the fog. Don't listen to the voices. And for the love of whatever gods you believe in, don't touch the jar. My name is David Kirsch, and I used to work for the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry. Most of my job involved trail inspections, fallen tree clearing, and checking signage. I loved it, being out in the woods alone, breathing in air so crisp it almost stung. I've hiked nearly every trail in the Pine Creek Gorge in Tioga State Forest. I know the area better than most maps do. That's why I can't explain what happened to me in May of 2019. That's why I haven't stepped into the forest since. It started with a simple assignment. Hike a disused service trail near Cedar Run that had been reported as overgrown and possibly unsafe. The trail wasn't even on most modern maps anymore. Just an old side spur branching off from the Black Forest Trail, marked only by a small painted rock at its mouth. Locals used to call it Widow's Walk, no one knew why. I assumed it was named after some old homestead, or maybe a local ghost story that never made it online. The morning I set out, the weather was ideal. Sunny, low 60s, slight wind. I parked at a pull-off, double-checked my pack, topo map, GPS, satellite phone, basic first aid, knife, filtered water bottle, backup batteries. I don't mess around when I go solo. That trail was supposed to loop back into the main path after 5 or 6 miles. But here's the thing. I never found the loop, and I never found the way back. About an hour in, the main trail narrowed. Trees leaned in. Light dimmed beneath the hemlocks. The birdsong started to fade, and I remember thinking this part of the forest feels too still. The trail sign I expected never came. Instead, I passed a crumbling stone marker, waist high, with a faint spiral carved into it. Not a blaze, not anything official. It looked ancient. I pulled out my GPS. Signal was bouncing. Coordinates jittered. I refreshed the app, nothing. Still, I kept going, assuming the trail would reconnect eventually. I noticed something odd about the trees ahead. They didn't move. No swaying, no shifting with the wind. The leaves didn't rustle. They were perfectly still, like a photograph. Then I noticed something even stranger when I looked back. The trail behind me looked different. It sloped uphill where I thought it had been flat. The light was wrong, too. Grayish, like the sun had dimmed behind something not quite clouds. I kept walking. After another mile or two, I found a rusted signpost hammered into a boulder. The lettering was all but eroded, but I could just barely make out one word beneath the corrosion. Hollow. No town or village I knew of. No mention in my route planning. I decided to turn back, but the moment I tried, my compass needle started spinning. Not fast, just a slow, lazy circle, like it was drunk. I laughed nervously, told myself it was magnetism in the rocks. I took a different route back, trying to trace my steps. I walked for an hour, 2. Then I came across the same boulder, the same sign, the exact same spot, and the stone marker was now cracked clean down the center. That's when I called in. The sat phone rang, then crackled, then dropped the call entirely. No signal. I turned it off and on again, dead screen. The woods around me were quiet now. No insects, no birds. Just windless silence and a faint sound like crying? No, not crying. Breathing. Something was breathing, deep and slow, like the whole forest exhaled at once. I backed away from the trail, planning to bushwhack toward a nearby road. But the moment I stepped off the path, I felt this horrible pressure in my chest, like my lungs were being compressed. The trees loomed too close, their trunks unnaturally tall, straight, perfect. My ears popped like I'd entered a different elevation, but the terrain hadn't changed. When I turned around, the trail was gone. Not obscured, gone. No footprints, no crushed brush. No hint I'd ever walked this way. Only that gray hush and the hum of air that felt just slightly too dense. I spun in circles for a while. Then I ran. Eventually I stumbled into a clearing. Dead center stood a massive wooden structure, something between a cabin and a shrine. Ancient, rotting, and wrong. The walls were covered in symbols etched deep into the wood. Spirals, circles, runes that made my eyes burn. A wind chime of bone fragments hung from the awning, turning slowly without any breeze. I heard whispers inside, whispering my name. I drew my knife. I don't know why, as if it would help. Then the door opened. There was no one there. Just a long, narrow hallway lit by hanging jars that glowed red from within. I should have run, but my legs moved on their own. At the end of the hallway was a mirror, a full-length mirror covered in black vines and dust. My reflection was wrong. It looked like me, but older, thinner, skin grayish, eyes too wide. My reflection smiled. I didn't. Then it mouthed something. I read its lips. You brought it with you. Behind me, something massive moved. I spun around, knife raised. Nothing. When I turned back, the mirror was gone. So was the hallway. I was outside, in the same clearing, but the structure had crumbled into ash, and the trees looked different, smaller, younger, like decades had passed. I ran until my legs gave out. Eventually I found a road, a real paved road with tire tracks. A hiker in a pickup found me 2 hours later. I looked like I'd been lost for a week, but by my watch I'd only been out there 10 hours. The pickup driver, Gary, I think offered me water. Said the trail I came out of hadn't been used in over 30 years. Showed me on his GPS. There was no Widow's Walk spur, no service trail, nothing. I showed him the spiral rock carving I'd found. It was gone when I went back. I told my supervisor a sanitized version. GPS malfunction, got turned around, found my way out. No mention of the shrine, or the mirror, or the whispers. But at night, I still hear my name, and sometimes when I walk past mirrors, I see my reflection hesitate before moving. Just for a second, like it's thinking about something. And every clock in my house, no matter how new, stops at 2:17 a.m.